Hello, hello, and welcome to Sprout Sessions. My name is Vera Flores, and I'll be your host today. I work on the community team here at Sprout, and I'm thrilled to be with all of you. Our goal with Sprout Sessions is to bring our industry together and arm you with insights to inspire you to take action on your own social strategy. We'll get started in just a moment, but first I want to cover off on a few housekeeping items. You'll notice that today's presentation might look a little bit different. We've experienced a couple technical difficulties, but rest assured, all of the content will be the same. It just looks a little different. These sessions will be recorded and live on our YouTube page. So if you have to step out, don't worry. You can access the recording immediately following the presentation. We also encourage all of you to engage with us and your fellow professionals on social by tweeting @SproutSocial or by using the hashtag SproutSessions. This is a digital conference, so be sure to get social with it. Lastly, our speaker has agreed to stick around for 10 minutes following their presentation to answer any questions. To ask questions directly, please use the chat panel to the right of your YouTube screen. You can ask questions throughout the presentation, and we will filter those to our speaker during the Q&A session at the end. Now let's get this session started. Allow me to pass it over to Madison Utendahl, Head of Content and Social at Museum of Ice Cream.
Hi guys, this is Madison. I am Head of Content and Social at Museum of Ice Cream, and thank you so much for the intro. I'm so excited to begin my Sprout session today. So today I'm going to be discussing how action online can drive action offline. And the Museum of Ice Cream is a really unique and special place in that our digital and physical communities are very much intertwined. Museum of Ice Cream was started in the summer of 2016 in New York City and started from the childhood dream and fantasy of our founder, Mary Alice Bunn. Mary Alice always wanted to create a space where her greatest childhood fantasies could live and where she could continue to foster and grow her imagination as an adult. One of her biggest dreams was to create a pool filled with sprinkles. And so as a result, she decided to put her time and energy into building her greatest fantasy. And that's how the Museum of Ice Cream was born. The Museum of Ice Cream is a physical and digital community. We are a space that captivates your sweetest fantasy and sugar-filled daydreams online and in real life. At Museum of Ice Cream, we really believe that the magic of creativity is only able to be harnessed through inclusive spaces that exist either on your phone or in a physical capacity. For Museum of Ice Cream, in order for us to drive action, we believe that our spaces need to be transformative, community, and action-oriented. Each of our rooms within our spaces are highly vibrant, colorful, and encourage our audience to go out there and make an impact in their community. Whether that is our rainbow room, as you see here in San Francisco, that is tied to the inclusivity and accessibility of the San Francisco community, our swing vignettes that are made for adults that allow for you to tap into your childlike wonder, or having a very diverse staff that is both racially, sexuality-wise, and gender inclusive. Those are things that we really believe in as a brand and tie into how we believe our brand is community and action-oriented digitally and in real life. For Museum of Ice Cream, we consider ourselves to be socially squared. And what that means is that we create environments that are built to foster physical human connections that can be amplified digitally. Here are 3 examples of rooms within the Museum of Ice Cream space that inspire action. For example, our first room, as you can see on the left, is a swing vignette. It sounds very simple and is very simple, but one thing that we've noticed is that it really reminds people of what it's like to be a child. We've had people of all ages come and take the step in action to sit on a swing and to tap into that childlike excitement that we all remember when we were a kid. Our banana split Sunday room, which was is located in our Los Angeles location, was an immersive experience that allowed for our guests to tap into being a child and walk into a space where bananas were streaming from the ceiling. And on our far right, we have our Make a Statement room, which is currently in San Francisco. What we find to be the most powerful about our Make a Statement room is that we encourage our guests to write statements that mean something to them on the walls for the next visitor to see. So the entire floor to ceiling is magnetized. And when you walk through the space, you see everything ranging from Black Lives Matter to my favorite ice cream flavor is vanilla to A love of my life is with me and by my side, to things such as promoting and encouraging support of DACA. It is that much of variety in terms of the action-oriented items that people then put on our spaces. How do we interact with our audience? Each piece of content that we create online aims to inspire action offline. We really believe that our spaces should encourage our communities to speak to one another. And in order to do so, we have external content pieces that create and foster that community. We believe that our interaction with our audience needs to extend much further than the four walls. And so our social media, newsletter, and website is what drives action to both encourage our guests to support one another and to connect after they leave the Museum of Ice Cream, to connect online, and to remind each other of the power of human connection. Here are three spaces within the Museum of Ice Cream that we consider to be hypervisual, and one that we notice a lot of our guests, when they come in, they interact with. We have the Cherry Room on the left-hand side. We have a balloon installation that was installed in Miami, and we have our Unicorn Room, which is in San Francisco. A lot of times people ask us how we get our information out there publicly when we don't have any traditional advertising. One thing that is specific to Museum of Ice Cream is that we really believe in grassroots engagement to drive action and change. One way that we reach out is through newsletters. Our newsletters have over 520,000 people subscribed globally. And on our newsletters, we specifically target ticket sale information, location news, insights, and hiring information. So this is a more logistical form of driving action, in the sense that our newsletter allows for our guests to learn about us and who we are, and then therefore go out and buy a ticket, apply for the job, or to learn about the city that we're inhabiting. Our website is another digital platform that we use to drive action and change. On our website, we have connections to our ticketing portals, information on our Museum of Ice Cream cities, and we provide information on local businesses that we encourage our audience and community to go out and support if they're in town visiting. We really believe that our website is another great extension of our Museum of Ice Cream community, and also is a more of a logistical way to interact with Museum of Ice Cream to drive action and change. We also have a connection to all of our social platforms on our website. And we encourage our guests to, if they enjoy their experience, to go onto our website and to choose a social platform of their liking, and to comment and engage with fellow Museum of Ice Cream audience members. Here's an example of a space that we find to be hypervisual, and one that really speaks to who we are as a brand. And this is our Jungle Room, which is located in our Museum of Ice Cream in Miami. The third way that we drive change and have action-oriented engagement is through our social media communities. For us, we really believe that the extension of your imagination and creativity that you very much tap into and harness when you're in the Museum of Ice Cream spaces needs to be as powerful and visual online, and specifically within our social channels. We repost user-generated content, we promote ticket sales, and we also incorporate audience testimonials of people speaking about their time in the Museum of Ice Cream and how it impacted them. For us, the greatest action that we can promote is by encouraging people to interact with one another, and to really believe that there are people in this world that are dedicated to finding happiness, and to believe that imagination exists and is out there. So if we can foster and create community around what we've created inside of our spaces, then we feel that we're doing a good job. Here are a couple other examples of our hypervisual and vibrant Museum of Ice Cream locations. On the far left, we have our ice cream genie. When you walk into the museum, she tells you about your ice cream future. In the middle, we have a picture of our unicorn stable inside our Unicorn Room in San Francisco, which is a fun, almost like mini cave that is made for adults, for you to go in and sit in this beautiful mirrored installation. And on the far right, we have images of our sprinkles, which are our very famous, iconic signature Museum of Ice Cream piece. As a takeaway, we really believe that our digital presence encourages action through encouraging our visitors to visit us in real life, which is buying tickets, engaging with our fellow ice cream lovers, which is fostering community that is created via social media and in person, and telling the people that you love and care about Museum of Ice Cream and the experience that you've had. And so that's why we encourage our guests and our audience to share on social. What I find to be really interesting about this sharing on social to create engagement with Museum of Ice Cream and to foster this sense of community and imagination is that we actually have a large percentage of our audience who haven't been to the museum, but who feel so inspired and connected to the Museum of Ice Cream digital community that they will then promote the museum on their own accounts. So in our opinion, if you create a safe space for people to be able to connect, that they'll organically and authentically create their own communities around it. We believe, and I strongly believe in this personally as well, that if you harness imagination, that you're really encouraging people to take the first step to completing a goal in their life. And in our opinion, that's the greatest form of action that we can inspire. Here's just a fun picture of Team Museum of Ice Cream. Our team is a huge component when it comes to driving action, as they are really just incredibly enthusiastic, optimistic people, and they encourage our guests to remind themselves that as they leave the Museum of Ice Cream, that the fun that they're having shouldn't have been limited to this experience, but something that you can carry into your day-to-day life. Overall, in our opinion, Museum of Ice Cream strongly believes that in order to create action, you need to create connection through shareability, foster community through engagement, create separate content categories for different purposes. So for example, our newsletter, website, and social channels, promote optimism, whether that's digitally or in real life. And that just speaks to what I was just saying about our Team Museum of Ice Cream, and remind people that imagination is our greatest tool that's inside of us that we should all be using. For Museum of Ice Cream, action doesn't exclusively mean ticket sales, as I've repeated over and over throughout this conversation, but it's something we genuinely believe in the sense that if you create visual shareability that's driven by accessibility and remind people the value of human-to-human connection, then the action that you want around your brand will happen meaningfully and organically. Here are two quotes that have really, really stuck with me of people who visited Museum of Ice Cream that have been active voices on our community, on our digital community, that had an amazing experience in our spaces that tie back to some of the themes I was discussing earlier today. We decided to take my grandmother to Museum of Ice Cream. Little did we know this experience brought the most joy I'd seen from her in a very long time. She said it reminded her of being young again. I thought this museum would just be something I could post on Instagram. Instead, we witnessed an 89-year-old woman exactly where she needs to be. Thank you all very much for creating a fun and inspiring space for everyone to channel your inner child. Here's another quote that I think is really powerful that speaks to the action-oriented community that we've provided. Hi, Museum of Ice Cream. I just want to share this. My boyfriend and I both work 50+ hours a week. We barely see each other after some weeks, and we live together. What brought us together for a weekend was our quick trip to LA and a stop at Museum of Ice Cream. It was absolutely the best time running around the museum like kids with something different in each room. It all felt super nostalgic to when we first started dating. In conclusion, Museum of Ice Cream is a space that really encourages action through our physical and digital presence. We feel that it's so important as a brand in this day and age to promote optimism and positivity, and really believe that the reason the Museum of Ice Cream has taken off is that this is a safe space that has reminded people that your childlike wonder and the importance of happiness and optimism, and also trusting thy neighbor, is really crucial to enjoying your life. In the end, we really, 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 really love what we do, and I think it shows in our work and the community that we've created. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Madison's presentation was so informative, and it's really great to see how visual the brand is, but how the experience can span across generations. I think that things that are very hot and trendy and popular on social sometimes don't resonate with older audiences or very younger audiences, and I think this spans a great universal connection for many human beings. So thank you so much. You're welcome to stick around for the next 10 minutes to ask any questions you have. And remember, you will be able to access the recording of this session following the completion of the Q&A. So let's get to our first question. Lauren on YouTube asks, do you think that having an Instagram theme is vital to social media success? If so, how do you create it?
An Instagram theme?
Yeah, so a visual theme, something that represents the brand, so colors or particular types of photos.
I think it's about having a cohesive visual narrative versus, I mean, I guess that technically is also a theme, but I do think there is power in having a cohesive brand identity. It doesn't necessarily have to be one color, or a filter that you use, but I really think there has to be a conscious effort to make sure that the post that you did from 3 weeks ago still ties into the post that you're going to be posting tomorrow. And that is what creates strong connection and helps foster and grow your community. Just making sure that you're really dotting your I's and crossing your T's and thinking about it holistically as a brand that has a 360 approach.
Thank you. That's a really valuable insight. I think that I would add when you're thinking about launching an Instagram account for a brand, you really want to hone in on the story that you want to tell as that brand and how visual assets are going to fit into that, whether it be the types of photos that you're featuring, either of people or landscapes or of your product, particularly if that's what you're focusing on. So it's really important to know your brand identity before you just start launching things on social. So that's a really great point. Thank you, Madison.
Absolutely.
Our next question is, do you have any specific strategy or prompts to encourage guests to share their experiences on social?
We do. We actually encourage our audience to message us directly with their story and a photo of their favorite moment throughout their experience. And we find that we receive some that are more, a lot of times we actually just get people saying, we loved our experience, ! But we also receive such in-depth and heartwarming testimonials, as I read in the past two. And I think it's just basically allowing for people to reach out and engaging with them. So we respond to every single message, regardless of what the story people told. And we find that if we engage further, so if someone says something, just 1 or 2 sentences about their museum experience, and we ask another question, that's when we really get the meat of it.
That's a great point. I love how the engagement is key. I think that because Museum of Ice Cream is such a visual, enticing place, that it creates a great background for a lot of social content, that people are more willing to share that experience with you. And of course, they want to be featured. Who wouldn't? So I totally get that. So our next question is, do you have a visual criteria that content has to meet or aligns with your brand, like brand guidelines, in order for it to be posted from both internal and external channels?
Yes, we do. We have a brand book that has a really very specific and detailed style guide that we encourage. I mean, I'm the person who looks at it and basically matches every post that we do to make sure that we're checking off all those boxes. So I really would say that is why the feed is also super strong, is that we always tap into that brand and style guide. And in my opinion, I think it's the best asset any Instagram account or social media account or any brand in general should have in order to make sure there is cohesion in their feeds.
That's a really valuable point. I think that brand guidelines help those who are starting off in social for a brand kind of know what to expect off the bat. And so things don't go rogue and feel disingenuous to the brand. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So the next question comes from Alessandra, and they ask, do you rely on Instagram more than any other channel of marketing to encourage consumers to visit Museum of Ice Cream?
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that question? It went out for a second.
Yeah, no problem. Do you rely on Instagram more than any other channel of marketing to encourage consumers to visit Museum of Ice Cream?
Yes, I would say Instagram is our number one channel that we rely on, and it's been the most successful. I will say we do have, because of our newsletters, like that is another great source of reaching out to people. And something that we do strategically is we send out our newsletter before we post about ticket sales and hiring options. So that it's a cross promotion that we do with both. But I really think Instagram is an incredible resource to getting your brand message out there, and one that's not used as often as it should in terms of grassroots marketing. And I think that marketing, advertising as we know it is going to be shifting entirely social, since people are not watching TV anymore in the same way, and billboards are not as captivating as they used to be.
Thank you. Yeah, I know personally, I always watch TV with a phone in my hand. So
Yeah,
that double
exactly.
screen life.
Yeah, and you can now choose not to have commercials at all. So the best way to reach people is via social.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it also really speaks to knowing your audience before launching social accounts and knowing what types of what platforms you want to launch your social brands on, right? You want to be a highly visual brand and you have something to display, then of course, naturally, you'd want to be on Instagram and put a lot of your effort there. So the next question is from Jimmy, and they ask, do you ever use live video to engage your current customers or to gain new customers?
So we actually don't use, we've done 1 or 2 Facebook Lives, but we don't really use live video as of yet, but I'm not against it. I think it is a super powerful source of information, and it's something that we've seen strategically from Facebook Live and Instagram Live is a great way to access your audience. We do semi-live things, so our staff members will pre-record their takeovers and then post them, but we don't do anything directly live.
Oh, how fun that you utilize employees to create content. I think that really speaks to a full social experience, and employees are more likely to engage on social if they're super happy with where they're working. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, and they really are the life. I mean, they're the lifeline of Museum of Ice Cream. We would not be what we are today without them. They have the best understanding of our audiences. They're on the ground meeting and interacting with our audience every single day. And there's just such a youthful and inspiring energy to our team that I think is really powerful, and one that shows really well on social.
I love that. Employee advocacy in action.
Absolutely, 100%.
So our next question talks about UGC. How do you create a content calendar if you're relying so heavily on UGC? Do you have priorities that you're focusing on, or is it just played ear by ear?
So I think that's a really great question. It's something that we have thought about a lot internally. We try to utilize UGC as much as possible, but definitely still create a content calendar week per week that doesn't always include updated UGC content. I think the best way to go about it, and the way that we choose to go about it as a brand, is understanding that there's the value and flexibility in constantly evolving our visual aesthetics. So that means not getting too fixated on exactly of what you think your feed's going to look like on Monday based upon a great image that could pop up later on in the week. So I think the best advice is just creating the content calendar as is, but also being open and flexible to the idea that it might shift, and being okay with that type of change.
Definitely agree. I think when working in social, you have to be open to flexibility because things are always popping up. There's seasonality, there's timely events that you can potentially hop on, but that's not to say that brands should hop on every single timely thing.
Right.
You want to make sure that it's organic and genuine to your brand. So I know that Museum of Ice Cream is a highly visual brand and encourages that type of visual asset. But do you have any suggestions for driving offline actions if your business isn't hypervisual?
Offline access if your business. So you mean utilizing social to drive offline action?
Yeah, but for a lot of like regulated brands like healthcare, you aren't necessarily allowed to show like the people in your hospital. So if you have any best practices for sharing the good word about what you're doing on social.
I think it's tapping into the emotional connections that are drawing people to your brand and using that as your greatest asset. So if you were a healthcare brand that can't post, human or personal testimonies on your page due to the, privacy of the client, what can you post about the values behind the brand or the emotional connection tied to the health experience that they've had? So maybe it's working with artists to create made for Instagram or made for social assets that speak to that emotion, or is it encouraging your your audience or people who've used your service to engage with each other on a different platform. So whether that's Reddit or Facebook, I believe that there's definitely a way to foster that sense of community and that emotional connection without having visuals tied to it. It's just about creating basically creating the guardrails for that to happen. So I would encourage brands to create, Facebook groups where your users could interact with one another. Maybe it's meetups, or it's channeling what you're hearing from your audience and making it accessible in a way that the brand can get behind. So maybe that is artist collabs, for example.
Those are some great ideas. Thank you so much, Madison. I love tapping into telling the story about what you're doing and creating that emotional connection. A lot of the times regulated businesses such as healthcare are doing something really, really good for the greater population. So if you can somehow tie that into your visual messaging, by all means try to. And I think that, if you don't have a huge budget for artist collabs, you could maybe focus on some of the community work that, the hospital or healthcare brand has done. So trying to find other reroutes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be of the product that you might be selling, or or the direct connection. These loose ties sometimes are a little bit more intriguing. So this is our last and final question of the session, and this is from YouTube, and this person asks, how do you handle photo and video consents when you're posting so much user-generated content?
So we always make sure we tag and credit people, and we reach out to the people that we are posting and ask if they're okay with us utilizing the image. But one thing to note is that we never post without that individual's permission, and we will never not credit the individual. And I think that's where a lot of brands get into trouble, and I've seen that on many accounts. So for example, if we post an image that we saw on another brand's account that was of a photographer named John Smith, I've noticed a lot that people will just post the brand that they grabbed the image from versus reaching out or finding who took that image and tagging John Smith and crediting him directly. And that's a mistake that we don't make. We always make sure we double, triple check with the individuals whose photo it is.
That's so important. Giving credit where credit is due is such a huge thing. And I think in the past couple of years, you've seen a lot more talk about smaller brands who are just starting off utilizing UGC in an unfair and probably non-legal way. So I really appreciate you calling out the fact that you get consent and you give credit. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I think it's also something that Instagram is working on in terms of how do we greater define those guidelines to make sure that artist and creative integrity doesn't ever get jeopardized. So I think it's an interesting development that will continue to shift over the next couple of years.
Definitely, definitely. Well, friends, it looks like we're running close to time. On behalf of Sprout, we want to thank all of you for attending this session. So keep your eyes peeled. We're going to compile some of the major takeaways from this session and share it with all of you. Feel free to continue the conversation on social media using hashtag Sprout Sessions. And thank you again to Madison and Museum of Ice Cream for this great session. From all of us at Sprout, thank you for joining in.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.